This is our bingo board for the day. There is an Imogene specific square. Remember, as soon as you get 5 across, vertical, diagonal, horizontal, again, some direction that is yet to be discovered, send a message to Grace and she will inform you what you have won by being the first to get a bingo. 5 across, any direction you can. That is our bingo board for the day. Take a screenshot if need be. But possibly even more important, we have our dinosaur of the day. 3, 2, 1. One of my favorites. Boom. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Allosaurus. We've talked about Allosaurus a little bit before. It has not been specifically our dino of the day. There's a very specific reason why it is the dino of the day. We'll come back to that in a little bit. This is our Allosaurus. This is our dino of the day. I'm excited to see your paleo art renderings towards the end. Remember, I would love it if you name the Allosaurus as well, rather than just like, look, it's an Allosaurus. And something for scale. As Imogene knows through a picture she showed me, which I'll show you in a minute, she recognizes how important scale is in science. So make sure you have something in there like me or whatever you want for scale. Speaking of Imogene, before I even show you on the Zoom, this is a picture of you. And the first thing I learned about you was that you are a big cat scientist. So first of all, can you tell us what that means? And second of all, why is a big cat scientist inside what looks like a lab/dentist office?
Heck yeah. All right. Well, hey, everybody. My name is Imogene. I'm super glad you guys decided to tune in today to hear a little bit about big cats. So like Dustin said, I am a big cat scientist. I specifically work on studying how carnivore or cat populations interact with their landscape. So I'm really interested in how populations are spread out across different spaces and how individual cats might be related to one another. This is really important for conservation in terms of identifying numbers of individuals across a landscape, as well as identifying where important features of a landscape are useful for their conservation. And the way that I do this, as Dustin alluded to, is through lab techniques. So even though wild cats are obviously out in the outdoors, I go out into the woods or in the mountains and collect data to bring back into the lab to process. And for my research, which is on snow leopards, which this is kind of a snow leopard, my research on snow leopards is basically using non-invasive techniques. And what that means is I collect data without ever having to see the individual animal. And the way that I do that, so this is a picture from when I was in Kyrgyzstan last summer collecting data for my dissertation. And what I'm holding in these little tweezers is actually cat poop. So I am a poop scientist. Big cat scientist is a really fancy way of saying that my job is to go out into the wild and collect cat poop. And here, as Dustin has already clued in, this is the very important scale factor. Chapstick is a great way to indicate what size something is, because most people have chapstick in their pockets or backpacks. But my research basically brings this cat poop, this feces, into the lab, and then I'm able to answer questions about identifying individual snow leopards. And then from that information, from that genetic information, I'm able to understand genetic populations, how individuals are related, and where they're spaced out across different landscapes.
Very cool. So before we get into the dino aspect of this, I want to show people this short video. Can you tell us, like, give us a preface, what's going on here? Because I know what I think I know what a snow leopard looks like, but here's one literally in the flesh. So did you shoot this? What's the deal here?
Yeah, so this was shot through a spotting scope, which is often used for birds. And this is one of my colleagues actually shot this, and I was with them. And so I took this big long clip and turned it into this little short video. What you're looking at is a snow leopard in the wild in China. And when I was in China last summer, we got to watch this female snow leopard charged down a mountain because she was hunting and she was trying to catch a marmot, which is a very, very large rodent. And she came charging down the mountain right through these wildflowers out in the open, and the marmot didn't even see her. And she flattened herself into the grass and just charged across to try to catch this rodent, and she barely missed him. And right here in this photo, she's panting because even though it was only 55 degrees outside, these are high elevation snow specialists. And she was really hot, and she was also really irritated. The beginning of the clip, we saw that her tail was flicking, and you can see it a little bit there too. But she is not pleased because she was not successful in catching that marmot. So here she is just walking away, and she disappeared about as quickly as she appeared. It was really awesome. It was my first wild snow leopard.
That's got to be amazing to be in the wild and actually see your study species barely missing its meal.
It was really magical. They're very rare and elusive, and we know very little about them, which is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing. So it was really a treat to be able to see one.
Nice. So I want to start with that because A, I want people to know a little bit about what you do. But secondly, you talked already about environment. You talked about behavior, a little bit about the adaptations it has, very briefly, like how it hunts. And so I want to talk to you today about what we can glean from modern apex predators, because cats on every continent except for Antarctica are the apex predators. And 66 million years ago, when dinosaurs were alive, there were some very large dinosaurs that were apex predators as well. And we can't go outside and see them. So I wanted to talk to you about what we could maybe learn from today's apex predators to give us clues about the past apex predators. But we can't do that. We really can't do anything until we play everyone's favorite game, Imogene, which is Dino or Not a Dino. Are you familiar with how this game works?
Go ahead and give us a recap so I know all the rules.
We're about to play Dino or Not a Dino. I have a list of 10 different animals, right? Some of which are actual real dinosaurs, some of which myself and Christina have totally made up.
So don't look at my face, Imogene. I'm just going to be trying not to laugh. So.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Something. Your job is to simply say if it's a dino or not a dino. You can ask for a spelling if you want. And also, if you'd like to poll the audience, simply look around the Zoom room where you're going to get a lot of thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay.
Sometimes the audience is helpful. Sometimes, meh. So,
are you ready? You guys.
You ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's dig in. Number 1, Deltadromeus. Deltadromeus.
Not a dinosaur.
I appreciate the tenacity and the confidence with which you answered incorrectly for the first Deltadromeus.
That was an airplane.
Maybe. Oh, that's a really cool name for an airplane. All right, you're 0 for 1. It's all right. Often our guest experts start very poorly and then pick up the slack. Number 2. Number 2, Stympodon. Stympodon.
I'm looking around the room because I want to see if you guys know.
Grace.
Wow, you guys are really confident. It looks like the room is saying that that is not a dinosaur. And so I am going to trust all of these experts here and say it is not a dinosaur.
So you're saying Stympodon is not a dinosaur?
I'm saying it's not a dinosaur. I saw a lot of thumbs down.
Okay, they are right and you are right. That is not a dinosaur. You're
okay.
Well done. Next.
50%, almost passing.
Yeah, I should have mentioned, you just have to get 6 out of 10. D- is passing here. All right. Number 3, Guanlong. Guanlong.
Can you spell that?
Sure. Guanlong. Guanlong.
That sounds outrageous enough to be true. And I'm going to say, yes, it is a dinosaur.
Imogene is going, Guanlong is a dinosaur. You are correct.
Yes!
It is a dinosaur, arguably, well, definitely one of the first tyrannosaurs. Guanlong, you were 2 and 1. Moving forward, here we go. I know, right? Grumpaceratops. Grumpaceratops.
It sounds like Triceratops, but it's not.
Ceratopsians. There are quite a number of animals in the ceratopsians, the atops group. So.
Okay.
Grumpaceratops.
I'm going to go with no, because that sounds like something that you would call a grumpy cat.
You are correct. Grumpaceratops is not a dinosaur. You're now 3 and 1.
I'm like an expert, guys.
Right. Here we go. Mantelodon. Mantelodon. I can spell this if you'd like. Mantelodon.
Spell it.
Mantelodon. Mantelodon.
Ooh, I don't know, so I'm going to take a gamble. I'm going to say yes, it is a dinosaur.
Great gamble. Actually, not a great gamble. It is actually, yes, it is a dinosaur. Mantelodon is an actual dinosaur. Mantelodon, that is a type of iguana. It's related to Guanodon, hadrosaur. Wow, you're 4 and 1, doing great. They're going to get tougher.
Okay.
Sorry, here we go. Number 6, Sylvestrix. Sylvestrix.
I'm just gonna go based on my intuition. I'm not even gonna look for help here. I'm gonna say that is not a dinosaur. Not a dinosaur.
Sylvestrix is not a dinosaur. Wow, 5-1, doing great. Pyro Raptor.
Pyro like fire? Pyro Raptor.
Like a spelling.
Is it Pyro?
It is. Pyro Raptor.
Not a dinosaur.
It is a dinosaur.
Ugh, okay.
Pyro Raptor.
It sounds like something from Harry Potter.
It does. It does. You are 5-2. Right?
Okay.
You're doing great. Next. Stokiosaurus.
Ooh, I don't know. So I'm going to look around the room and see what you guys think. All right, guys, thumbs up if you think it is a dinosaur, thumbs down if you think it's not. I see some adamant head shaking. All right, I'm going to go with not a dinosaur.
You sure?
Yes.
Stokiosaurus is a dinosaur.
Okay.
Stokiosaurus is a dinosaur. It's, again, one of the first tyrannosaurs. All right, we got a couple more. Let's see, you've gotten 5 right, 3 wrong. You have 2 more. All you have to do is get one of these.
Okay.
Here we go. Mufasanator.
Not a dinosaur.
You're going no. You're going no. All right, you're correct. Mufasanator is not a dinosaur. Before I give you the last one, do you have any idea what the theme of our not dinosaurs is today?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I mean.
It seems like the theme runs along a felid theme. So cats.
Yes, maybe. Maybe this last one will give you a hint. Last but not least, Osriel. Osriel.
Like, is that like a Disney theme? Because I don't think that sounds like a dinosaur. It sounds like Ozzy and Ariel.
Would you like me to spell it, or you're ready?
I would. Okay, spell it first. Spell it first.
Azrael. Osriel.
Not a dinosaur.
No, that is the cat. That is Gargamel's cat from the Smurfs. And you were correct. We have a cat theme. We had Stimpydon from Ren and Stimpy. We have Grumpaceratops. You said it, Grumpy Cat. Garfield, Sylvestrix, Sylvester, Mufasanator, obviously, and Osriel the cat from the Smurfs. You crushed it. You got 7 out of 10, which is very good. And because you passed, you have won the right to not be kicked out of the Zoom room immediately. You get to hang out.
Thanks, guys, for the help.
All right. So you did great. Let's get right into it. I know we're going to have a ton of questions. You guys, if you have questions about big cats as we are going, Christina already has some. Send those to Christina. Before we jump right into it, I have to ask you, because I know people are wondering, give me your 15, 30-second take on Tiger King. You're a big cat scientist. I know people have asked you.
They have. So Tiger King was a documentary that was supposed to be about private tiger ownership, meaning people like all of us here owning tigers as pets and using them for profit, basically to make money, but pretending that they are doing work for conservation. And the problem with this show is that is just a big old slice of baloney. There is so much wrong with that statement. The most important being that none of us here are qualified to own a tiger as a pet. It is about as reasonable for any of us to have a tiger in our backyard or in our basement as a pet as it would be for any of us here to own a Tyrannosaurus Rex as a pet. Not even Dustin is qualified to have a T-Rex as a pet. And Dustin knows more about T-Rex than anybody that I know. So realistically, what it boils down to is that this show basically didn't teach us the difference between identifying a good zoo or a good sanctuary and a bad one that isn't helping conservation. And I talk a lot about that. And so if you have specific questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Yeah,
I think that's the biggest, I don't want to say misconception, but missed opportunity in that show. They could have done just a little bit more about what it actually takes to take care of an animal like this that obviously shouldn't be in captivity, but sometimes has to be based on circumstances. And yeah, I think that they could have done a little bit more. And I think the biology and science community may not have been so up in arms and been able to kind of enjoy it a little bit more if that message had come across.
That's
why we have people like you. So Imogene, I wanted again today talk about apex predators today and corollaries between apex predators a long time ago. So I guess I'm curious to know specifically about first your study species, the snow leopard. Can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, you already did a little bit about kind of the hunting strategies, the behavioral hunting strategies of a snow leopard, and maybe how that might be different from another type of big cat.
Right. Okay. So the first thing to start off this conversation, I'm going to ask everybody to think of an answer of something, and you can either drop it in the chat or you can raise your hand and we can answer it later. But I want you to tell me what you think the closest living relative of the snow leopard is.
Ooh, great
It's
question.
a species that is still alive today. And just think about it. And if you know what it is, either you can hold it up in a photo or you can drop it in the chat.
Send it to Christina in the chat. Now, do you mean another type of cat or outside of cats? So
there's another cat that is considered the closest relative. And when I say closest relative, it is in terms of evolution, species that have evolved similarly, or more specifically, they share a recent common ancestor. And so this work is determined by genetic analyses and tracing lineages through the fossil record. And it's kind of surprising. I thought it was really cool when I learned, but it's relevant because one of the things that we're going to talk a lot about today is adaptation. And so when it comes to evolution and when it comes to different species specializing on their individual landscape, there's a lot of evolutionary and behavioral characteristics that basically go into allowing this predator to be successful on the landscape. And so the snow leopard is no exception to that. The snow leopard lives in 12 different countries in Central Asia. So it's called a snow leopard for a reason. And if you guess it's because it lives in the snow, you would be correct. The snow leopard is considered a high elevation mountain specialist. And what that means is that the animal lives at really high elevation. So really, really high distances above sea level. So basically a snow leopard can live anywhere on average from 10 to 20,000 feet, which is really, really high. And it's a really difficult environment to be in because the higher you go up, the less oxygen there is in the air, the colder it is. In the winter, there's generally a lot more snow. And it changes the vegetation composition on the entire landscape. And so realistically, only a limited number of species or species that have specific characteristics or adaptations are able to be successful in these types of environments, which is why we call it a specialist. And so these guys are successful, like I said, at really high elevation and at really low temperature. And the way that they do that is by having a really thick coat, a really long tail that they effectively use like a scarf. And then they've also got physical adaptations and characteristics that make them able to successfully hunt on the landscape. And so if you've ever seen a video like on National Geographic or on YouTube of something like a cheetah or a lion hunting or a wolf or any predator, you often see them sprinting really, really fast across a landscape. And snow leopards are no different, except for the fact that snow leopards, because they're mountain specialists, actually live on mountains. They live on the edges of these rugged cliffs. So there's a lot of rocks in their habitat because they're hunting things that also live in that environment. And so different types of ungulates, which is a classification for different goats or sheep, these wild animals live on this landscape as well. And in order for a snow leopard to actually catch one of these, she's got to be able to literally run down a mountain. And being able to do this needs to involve speed, agility, but also a level of dexterity that you or I probably don't have. So if you imagine running really fast in a straight line, that might be really easy for some of you, but imagine trying to do it down a mountain without falling down. And that's basically how snow leopards are able to be successful. And it's totally wild because some of the adaptations that they have are their claws. So all of the cats have retractable claws, meaning that they can, you know, if you have a cat at home, you see how your cat's paws sometimes look like this, sometimes they look like this. That's because the claws help them do two things. One, it helps them traverse their landscape. Like if they have to turn really fast, the claws can be helpful in, you know, kind of getting their grip on the ground. But it also helps them secure their prey because obviously if you're a predator and you're attacking something, you have to be able to keep hold of it. And so snow leopards, all the cats are like that, but snow leopards also really realistically need that. And they are different. Let's see, did anybody, before I jump into this, did anybody talk about?
Yeah, Christina,
we've got a lot of guesses. Fred thinks the American lynx.
Oh, interesting.
Martin says, I got a bunch of these. Martin said tiger. Christopher says Amur leopard. I probably said that wrong. Jada says
leopard. Okay.
cheetah or panther from Adela. Leonosaurus says lion. Madeline says bobcat. Rebecca said ocelot. Grace, what'd you get?
Natty says tiger. T also says tiger. Someone also guessed the Himalayan cat, the domesticated Himalayan cat.
Okay.
Michael said tiger. Both are in the genus Panthera.
Ooh, someone's getting warm.
And then Ida said,
Tom and Jerry.
maybe.
You guys ready for the answer?
Oh, we got one more. A few more. Yasmin says mountain lion. Martin says puma.
Mm-hmm.
Ida said my instinct is their closest relative is the normal leopard. And then I have from Ellie and Dylan and Jenna have all said tiger.
Okay, those are all really good answers. That means that you guys know a lot of cats, which I'm really impressed by, but are we ready for the answer now?
Yeah, let's hit me.
Okay, so the closest living relative of the snow leopard is in the same genus. So the snow leopard is in the genus Panthera, which is one of the big 5 cats. So there's the tiger, the lion, the leopard, the jaguar, and the snow leopard. The biggest of those is the tiger, and the smallest of those, if I can bend my finger, is the snow leopard. And the tiger and the snow leopard are the most closely related to one another of those 5 cats. So if you guessed the tiger, you are correct. If you guessed some of the other big cats, you were on a good, you made a good guess, but actually when it comes to their genetics, the lion, the leopard, and the jaguar share a more recent common ancestor than the tiger and the snow leopard. And so all of these cats, all of the different wild cat species that are on Earth are basically, they originated from the ancestor of Panthera. So the origin of the whole entire group of felids of wild cats originated in Central Asia with what is now, which became what is now known as the Panthera genus, which is those 5 big cats. So every other cat, so like the mountain lion, the ocelot, even your domestic cat, they're all distantly related somewhere along their evolutionary tree to these 5 cats. So, of all the 5 big cats, the snow leopard is considered the youngest, meaning that in terms of those evolutionary branches breaking off from one another, the ancestor that gave rise to the tiger split off before the ancestor that gave rise to what is currently the snow leopard. And so those 2 cats look wildly different. So if we think about a tiger, we're talking about this really, really large-bodied, heavy, it's the largest cat in the entire world that is still living. It's orange and black. And so it seems like we might, think about that. What, you look at that and you're like, how would you be out in the wild and not see that? It's a giant orange cat. And so these cats live in the jungles. They live in landscapes that are lush and green, like as green as my shirt. But they also live alongside water. And these cats, as apex predators, are super, super skilled when it comes to being invisible. And so this really is just a testament to like the adaptations of these cats. They're large, but they're stealthy and they're quiet, and you really don't see them until it's too late if you are the prey item of one of these cats. But in contrast, Dustin, do you have a question?
So we keep talking about different cats, and I just want to go back for a sec. You mentioned all the big cats have retractable claws, right?
Except for one. So the only cat that doesn't have fully retractable claws is the cheetah.
Interesting. Good segue too, because that was my next question. As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert, snow leopards hunt individually, right? They're ambush predators that hunt by themselves, but not all cat species hunt individually. Some hunt in groups, and obviously the landscape that a snow leopard is employing is much different than that of a cheetah. So if we went to cheetahs, which are the fastest animals on land, period. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious to know about like the differences in hunting strategy. I mean, you already talked about the type of tail, but can you walk us through a little bit about like how a cheetah, for instance, hunts differently, whether it's based on its adaptations or if it's hunting in a pack versus a snow leopard? I mean, they can fly though, right? Based on this picture, I didn't know they could fly.
They do, 100%. The cape is invisible, but they do always wear it.
Okay, cool.
So the main similarity between like a snow leopard and cheetah, for example, is that tail. And I mentioned that it's useful for a snow leopard for 2 things. One, when it's really cold, snow leopards actually will use their scarf, or they'll use their tail like a scarf, and they'll wrap it around their body to hide their face, which is super cute. But cheetahs and snow leopards will use that tail like a rudder. So if you think about being in the water, on like a boat. And how do you go left or right? You use this little motor that basically is like a tail or like a fin that helps you turn left or right. The tail on a cheetah and a snow leopard is the exact same tool. Snow leopards need it to help them pivot really quickly as they're running down mountains. But cheetahs, like in this photo here, because they're the fastest land mammal, they can go from 0 miles per hour to 63 miles per hour in less than 3 seconds. And in order to pursue their prey, which is running almost just as quickly, if not faster than them, well, at some speeds, depending on when they start running, they have to be able to turn really, really quickly. And the tail is what enables them to whip left and right really, really fast. But the other thing for cheetahs that's really, really important to how they hunt on the landscape is because they're plains ambush putters. They run mostly on flat land. They need to be able to turn left and right quickly, but they also need to be able to do that like safely and with stability. And the way that they do that is by having claws that are only semi-retractable. And so this helps them from like sinking into like softer substrate. And so this cat right here, yeah, like Dustin's zooming in on the photo, that's about as far as their claws are going to, like, I guess, retract. So they're not going to disappear entirely like your domestic cat does. And also like the snow leopard or any of the other cats is going to. And so realistically, the cheetah is kind of more dog-like in that way than some of the other cats, because dogs don't have retractable claws at all. None of their claws are never retractable, which is why if you see a track in the woods that's in the mud and it has claws on it, there's a chance that it's probably going to be something that's not a cat.
So speaking of tails then, what's the deal with the bobcat, which basically does not have a tail?
Yeah, so fast fact, I studied bobcats for my master's thesis, and this right here is one of the cousins of the bobcat. So this is also this is going to be a species in the lynx genus. This looks like a Eurasian lynx. And so there are 4 species. There's Eurasian lynx, there's Iberian lynx, there's the Canada lynx, and there's the bobcat. And all 4 of these guys have cute little nubbin tails. And there's other species that have little nubbin tails too, like caracals and servals. And one thing, if you look at photos, you'll notice that not only are their feet really big, but their back legs are really, really powerful. And the reason those back legs are powerful is because they're basically like cats on springs. So these guys are able to catch their prey by jumping really high in the air. So they're not limited to just hunting small rodents that run across the ground. They can really kind of exploit their environment in the air as well. So they can catch birds really well. And I think when it comes down to their evolution, realistically, when you just have to jump really high, your tail's gonna get in the way, and it's just kind of like wasted vertebra. So my hypothesis is that over millions of years of evolution, the tail became obsolete as they were exploiting their environment in a different way.
That's very similar to what my theory about the small T-Rex arms are. Nature is selecting for a bigger, stronger, more powerful bite. Arms were less and less useful. There are always trade-offs in a body plan.
Exactly.
I want to ask you one more question, and I think we have a special thing, but we'll get to that in a sec. So we haven't mentioned a lot of people's favorite cat, the lion, and I wanted to bring that up specifically because we've been talking about animals that, at least in my knowledge, hunt pretty much in isolation by themselves. I know sometimes cheetahs will team up with other cheetahs. You mentioned snow leopards hunt in isolation, but a lot of times lions hunt in packs. So I'm just curious if you could talk for a moment about kind of the differences in hunting strategies and behavior between and adaptations physically between animals like the lion that hunt in packs versus isolation ambush hunters.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cool thing about like the adaptations for all the different cat species is going to be really advanced eyesight and as well as hearing. And so I think the hearing of all of the cats is something like 400 times better than ours. Oh. So I have to wear glasses because my vision's not good. But if I had perfect vision, multiply that by 400 and I would be on my way to being a really cool cat. But when it comes to their actual adaptations, they're not just physical. So like Dustin already has alluded to it. So we've talked about things like their tail. We've talked about like their retractable claws, but we also need to talk about different like physical and behavioral adaptations. And so hunting in groups is a very specific adaptation that some carnivores employ in order to be successful. There's 2 different reasons that they do this. One, lions in general, they are communal. They live in prides. We know that, right? But they basically rely on one another at all times. Like they help raise one another's young, they protect one another, they maintain territory, and yes, they hunt together. And so this makes them be more successful because they have to feed the group. But the other thing is, look how big this water buffalo is in this photo. That's a big hamburger. And you're not going to be able to bring that down by yourself. So not only do you need your closest friends to help you get your takeout, but you also need to be really, really powerful. And lions are, you know, in addition to hunting in these prides and these packs, they're also really big, they're bulky, they're tough, and they've got a really, really incredible like physical strength and really strong bite power. And it's the same for things like for tigers as well. And one of the things I think that's so interesting about how these cats evolved differently from one another is you've got, you know, the lion, which basically lives in packs. You've got the cheetah, which only males live together. And then you've got something like the tiger, which is absolutely enormous. And it has, you know, this amazing bite power because of the way their skulls are shaped. But the closest living relative, the snow leopard, has a really, really small skull. And so the animal is not able to take prey as large as a tiger might be, or a tiger is not going to be able to take something quite as large as a lion, even though the tiger is bigger, because the prey item is just so large that you would only be able to be successful if you are hunting with your buddies.
Did Christina hear that? Christina, I heard what? I heard what?
Oh. I think I heard off in the distance the harmonious cawing of a speculative dino sound.
I would say that is not a cat sound.
No, that's not, but it is a very special sound. Christina, what does that mean?
That signals the beginning of everybody's new favorite game. It's called Die for Love. And Imogene, you are playing with us today.
Okay, I'm excited.
So I want to give a shout out to Natty, who started playing this game at home. It turns out I got to see that picture. It's beautiful. So the way this will work, I have not a regular die, but an app with a die on it. I will roll it. And depending on what number it lands on, you will have between 1 sentence and 1 minute to tell us why you love the thing corresponding to that number. So I have a list here from a secret informant named Dustin of 6 things that you love.
Me, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will read these off to you and then I'll put them in the chat. So if it lands on the number 1, you'll tell us why you love pho. 2,
Why you love what? Say that again.
Pho, the Vietnamese noodle soup.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
2, snow leopards. 3, growing up on a farm. 4, field work. 5, your dog Rio. Or 6, soup dumplings.
Ooh, okay. Dustin does know me well.
All right. So there's a great song that everybody knows. On 3, we will sing Die for Love. That's the whole song. Ready? And then we'll roll. 1, 2, 3. Die for love. Amazing. I have rolled a 2. So between 1 sentence and 1 minute. Why do you love the snow leopard?
Okay, go. All right, so I love snow leopards because I'm really fascinated by apex predators. I am especially fascinated by those species that have to meet their resource needs. So carnivores have a lot of resource needs. They require a lot of space. They require a lot of resources in order to raise their young. They require a lot of food in order to be successful. I am really fascinated by these species that have to work so very hard to meet all of their resource needs. And they often have to do it across really hostile landscapes, as well as while living alongside humans. And so I love snow leopards not just because they are beautiful and rare and elusive, but I'm really fascinated that they are able to raise young successfully and hunt and live in these beautiful mountains that are often really, really dangerous. They're very cold, there's low oxygen, and they're able to do this just as successfully as other species that are living at much lower elevation and not in snow at all. And so I'm really fascinated by species from a biodiversity and conservation perspective that are especially sensitive because they're doing all of these things in the space of humans. And in terms of conservation, protecting snow leopards means protecting water for people, it means protecting mountain ecosystems, and it means saving several other wildlife species as well.
Wow, look at that timing.
Right on track.
All right, let's roll it again.
Let's do it again, everybody. 1, 2, 3.
Die
for
love. It's a 1.
Why do I like pho?
Yeah.
Is that it? All right. So if you don't know, pho is the most important thing that you will ever eat. It's a dish, it's a Vietnamese noodle dish. So it's basically if you can make it vegetarian, but I'm gonna describe it as it is, which has meat in it. So it's a beef broth with rice noodles and lots of chives and basil, and you can put spices in it. And it's amazing because in Asia, often noodle soups are served as breakfast. So realistically, you can eat it any time of the day. And I like food any time of the day. And so noodles are good, again, any time of the day. I like pho because it is good for your digestion. It's easy. It's a whole diet. So you get your carbs, you get your protein, and you also get bone broth, which has things like collagen in it, which is really good for your digestion. And who doesn't love basil? And who doesn't love sprouts? And who doesn't love chili powder and chili oils? And basically, you should just go try it.
I agree. Wow, every food group is represented. All right, I think we have time for one more.
One more.
Imogene, are you ready to spell?
I'm ready.
And 1 more minute on telling us about one more thing that you absolutely love. Okay, everybody, last time. 1, 2, 3.
Love.
Yes. All right. We got a 3. Tell us why you love having grown up on a farm.
Ooh, I like this one.
So I grew up on a dairy goat farm, and we had dairy goats, but we also had pigs and chickens and geese and cows. And I really liked that because it was my first introduction to interacting with animals. And it was my first introduction to being able to see where my food comes from. And so realistically, being able to grow up where I was just always outdoors, I was interacting with animals, and I was learning about the environment in terms of how to feed them, how to take care of them, but also how to do it in a way that doesn't hurt the wildlife that we live alongside. It's something that really helped me develop my interest in the outdoors, and that specifically kind of helped lead me to conservation. And so I think that, you don't have to live on a farm in order to be passionate about wildlife or the environment. But for me, it was just a really kind of magical childhood because I was always seeing wildlife. I helped raise baby goats. I got to have fresh eggs every single day. And I also, learned a lot about hard work.
Well done.
Did it.
Well done.
I expected you'd have to drag me off stage when we got to talking about noodles, but I tried.
That's why specifically we did not have you do soup dumplings as well.
Yeah,
all
that's
right.
true.
All right, let's get to the meat of the matter. I guess that was a carnivore joke, kind of, not really. Yeah. So I wanted to have you on. We talked about this earlier. I wanted to have you on so we could talk about apex predators today and what we can learn about apex predators in the past because of that. So I want to go back to our dino of the day. Do you remember what the name of our dino of the day was, Imogene?
Was it Karen?
Yes, this is correct. This is Karen the Allosaurus. Correct. This is Karen the Allosaurus. Again, so first of all, this is speculative with respect to the colors. They may have maybe had a little bit of featheration. Not really sure. We don't know the colors, but this is the general size of the Allosaurus, right? And I wanted to talk about the Allosaurus because we hear a lot about T-Rex, which is this giant, very powerful predator. And then we hear a lot about Velociraptor, which is much more smaller and swift and probably pretty smart. But the Allosaurus, in my mind, is like the perfect predator situated right between those extremes, right? It's not giant, but it's not tiny. So it's going to be pretty swift, but it's not going to be as bulky as a T-Rex. The other thing you may have already noticed is it's got much bigger arms and claws than, for instance, the T-Rex we mentioned earlier. In fact, here's an image of the fossilized arms there. So we know based on the size and based on muscle attachment scars, they had pretty strong, powerful, probably useful arms. Right? Okay. More so than a T-Rex. We also know a lot about the environment they were in. We know they're fighting against dinosaurs like Stegosaurus that it was attempting to eat. I should also mention this guy, Imogene, is about 3,000 pounds, maybe a little bit more, about 23 adults. And they can move between, we think, 20 and 30 miles per hour.
Wow.
Other really cool adaptation, more so than probably any other carnivorous dinosaur, is they had a giant mouth gate. Some studies put it at about 90 degrees, which is a really, really large gate for being able to open a mouth. It also, and you can see in this picture, has much smaller teeth than a T-Rex. They were still very sharp, definitely still serrated, but much smaller. So based on that, and based on the fact that we have found Allosaur tooth mark scars, both in dinosaurs like Stegosaurus and
I had no idea the 8 triangles.
Allosaurus. What, Christine?
I had no idea the 8 triangles. That's incredible.
They're good in noodles.
Probably.
So Based on all of this, based on its medium size, based on the fact it lived, by the way, in we find a lot of these in Colorado, around in the Morrison Formation. Again, Stegosaurus was around. We know its size. We know the arms. Imogen, I know we can only make good guesses or relatively smart hypotheses about how this thing may have behaved in a hunting capacity. But based on what we know and the description, physical and adaptation description I just gave you, what would your guesses be as to, with respect to like how this thing hunted, who it hunted, where it hunted, if it hunted in packs? What are your guesses?
So the fact that it's a medium carnivore to me means that it is not, it has a decent chance of being what we would call an ecological generalist. So meaning that a species like a bobcat is a mesocarnivore, it's a medium-sized predator. And so it's able to exploit a lot of different food sources. And so combined with like the medium size, I would say that maybe this animal was really adept at predating on things of various size. The fact that it can run really fast, to me, and the way that it's I guess the body is balanced, I would think that this species is going to be really good at obviously ambush predation, and so basically charging across long distances to capture its prey. But because those arms are strong, I would imagine that they serve some capacity at being able to actually restrain the prey itself, as opposed to something like a T-Rex, which doesn't necessarily seem as adept to doing that.
That's a really good point, because one theory based on the size of the teeth, the musculature, and the mouth agape is that T-Rex was probably moving and biting much like an alligator or crocodile, where it grabs and like does this thing, whereas we think with Allosaurus, it probably bit more straight down, grasped with the arms, and then kind of pulled in a vertical up and down or away from the body motion, instead of like a crocodile or a T-Rex grabbing and shaking side to side.
So like the head makes sense that it would do that. It has like that range of motion while it's holding, because if its range of motion for its arms is down here, it might not be able to go like left to right, but going up and down would be able to rip its food items. And it's like, so those really, really small teeth would be, to me, kind of similar to maybe something like a shark or like some of your crocodilians, in that they are designed, you know, they don't have thumbs, so they can't like pull their burgers apart like we can, but they can grip something and basically tear the flesh as well as tear bone. And so like in terms of its food items, because those teeth are so incredibly small, it obviously is they have A, the carnassials, and B, the fact that there's a lot of teeth. It seems like most of their power is going to, they're like, sorry, let me back this up. When it comes to something like a cat, they've got those really big canines, but they've got really big muscles. This is maybe not the time, but this is a Wolverine skull, and they've got these big holes right here. So this is a Wolverine skull, so let me back up. I'm going to answer my question in a second. This is a Wolverine skull. They can't open, so this is as far as a Wolverine can open its mouth. So like this is far less than the 90 degrees that the Allosaur can do. But one of the reasons that Wolverines are able to be successful is because these holes right here, so this is the eye hole, but this is a hole where muscles are going to connect from around the skull to the bottom of the jaw to help it open and close its mouth. But what these muscles right here do, like my fingers would represent these muscles, these are temporal muscles. These muscles enable it to have really wild bite power. So it can bite down, but these muscles effectively help it lock the prey in place. So they actually have a really, really powerful bite. And so it looks like this guy, this Allosaur, maybe doesn't have super huge like temporal muscles, like maybe something like a T-Rex would. And so I think that it's the way it eats, or the way it relies on subduing its prey, is going to be a combination of those arms and then tearing before they would use the bite power to hold it down, because they might not have that structural advantage when they're attacking something that's really large.
Imogen, congratulations. You're now a speculative paleontologist. Well done. So we
Excellent.
have about 10 more minutes, and I know we have a ton of questions, so we should go to the questions. Let's do 3 from Christina and then 3 from Grace. Let's do this rapid fire. Imogen, try to answer these relatively quickly, because I know we got a lot.
Yeah, drag me off stage, sorry.
Christina, hit us first.
Tyrannosaurus wants to know, we know that poaching of big cats for commercial use is a problem, but what are your thoughts on natives across the world who hunt big cats for their own consumption? Would you consider that sustainable, or does culture need to be changed?
Wow.
I think that's a great question. That's like an amazing question. I think realistically, when it comes to conservation and addressing the impacts of humans on any individual species. We have to be really mindful of the people that live alongside wildlife. So the groups that I work with that live in the mountains, these indigenous herders that have a more nomadic lifestyle, they know more about snow leopards than any of us do. And so realistically, their livelihood depends in part on those interactions. And so I think it's unfair of us as scientists to come in here and say, hey, we know more. Hey, your cultural practice that you've been doing for millions of years is bad and you should stop it. Realistically, we need to come up with alternatives if there is an instance in which that can happen without jeopardizing the cultural practices of an indigenous community. And I think that's incredibly important to do. And sometimes that might involve coming up with substitutes, that might involve in, creating financial incentive to help people shift their practices without eliminating their culture. And sometimes that might also be finding alternatives that alleviate some of the other conservation concerns while maintaining the cultural identity that is relevant for those people that live alongside the animal in question.
Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Shanna asked, she's found conflicting results on this after a student asked in her bio class, are the lion sounds in The Lion King actually recordings of tigers mashed up with other animal sounds?
I have not actually heard that. Let me think about the sounds. So all of the big cats make a sound which is called a chuff. And it's like this, it's called a chuff, like C-H-U-F-F, and it's a communication sound. And it basically sounds like this. And yes, that, that's the closest a human is going to get to it. And that's basically how tigers say hi to you and say hi to one another. And so I didn't hear that in the video, but the other sound that I hear is kind of like a low mewing. And lions really make that sound because it carries really far, and that helps them maintain, like, hey, this is my territory, and maybe it spreads out like a mile. I'm not sure if there's actually a mashup, though. I'd have to look and hear them specifically because there's so much similarity between the species, like with some of those low sounds. I'm not positive if it's all lions or if there's any other cat species in there.
Yeah, I found conflicting information on this too. So
okay. I'll have to look it up.
Martin asked, what is your favorite prehistoric cat?
Ooh, great question.
I'm a big fan of Smilodon. So one of the saber-toothed cats. It's not the largest saber-toothed cat. There are 3 different species in Smilodon, and one of them weighed like 1,000 pounds, and I can't remember which exact species it is, but basically they look like a bobcat, but it was like the size of a tiger, and it didn't have a tail, and obviously those characteristic long teeth. And they're really interesting because they're thought to have evolved on, in plain, like in central United States, like on the Great Plains ecosystem in what is now North America. And I just think that's really interesting.
Cool. All right, Grace, hit us with your questions. We have about 5 minutes left. We're doing the rapid fire question round. Go ahead.
All right, great. So Natty wants to know a little bit more about hold on, let me find it. About the snow leopard. She wants to know, are they in danger? And what is being done, if they are, what is being done to protect them?
Yeah, so snow leopards are listed as vulnerable by the IUCN, which means that their populations are not low enough to be considered endangered status. So that's good, but also not great. It's because there are a lot of threats to conservation threats for snow leopards. That includes climate change, because Central Asia is warming really fast, and they are, snow specialists, which we already talked about. Poaching is also a problem. Poaching directly of snow leopards, but also poaching of their prey items. There's a lot of unregulated trophy hunting in Central Asia. And when the snow leopards don't have food, they're not able to be successful, they're not able to raise their babies. And more importantly, they are also more likely to come into contact with humans. They're more likely to go into villages and to go into paddocks and steal food that humans grow, like livestock, which results in the direct retaliatory killing by the locals. And so between that and like habitat fragmentation due to climate change or things like urban development, there's a lot of different issues at play all at the same time. And so different conservation groups, like the one that I work with called Panthera, is working alongside scientists all over the world and different conservation groups all over the world, different institutions and NGOs, to basically try to address some of these conservation concerns, both in terms of snow leopards, habitat, as well as making sure the people who live alongside them are also protected.
Great. Martin wants to know, are big cats I'm going to butcher this word, a monophyletic group? Ooh. Or if it's not, what's the difference between big cats and other cats?
You guys, as you answer that, Imogene, I'm going to go through our paleo art gallery to look at some of these Allosaurus. So You guys in the Zoom, hold up your amazing drawings. Imogen, feel free to answer that as well as comment on any of these as we go.
Okay. All right. So if a group is monophyletic, that essentially means that they are one genetic lineage. And so the most recent common ancestor of all 5 of the big cats, all 5 big cats share an ancestor way, way, way back in time, but they share different ancestors up along the evolutionary lineage, so they wouldn't be truly like monophyletic in that way, because like the tiger and the snow leopard share an ancestor more recently than the snow leopard and the common leopard does. And so what was the other part of the question? I already forgot. I'm like getting super sidetracked by Karen.
Karen!
What's the difference between like big cats or other cats?
Yeah, so the difference between like the big cats, first in terms of like the evolutionary tree, let's see, I see we've got Dustin and someone named their dinosaur Allie. I like it. The difference is that all of the cats on Earth basically evolved from an ancestor that gave rise to the modern big cats. And there are 8 different lineages of big cat, of all of the cats. The big cats is one group. The ocelot group is all one group. We've got like cheetahs and mountain lions are in a group together. And so basically it comes down to when can we genetically identify the most recent common ancestor of the living species? Let's see, I see a genie. I'm super sidetracked by these. I really, really love these drawings. You guys are very artistic.
So our last question, Imogen, is, so we know you're a biologist. Is that the best route for a kid to take to study big cats? Or, what other schooling do you think that they should pursue?
So if you're really interested in studying big cats or any carnivore, my recommendation for you is to learn about everything. Obviously, we are here learning about dinosaurs, and but we're also not just learning fast facts about dinosaurs or big cats, right? So like these conversations that we're having are talking about like the environments that they evolved in. What are some of their relationships with other species, and why is it as important? So regardless of whether or not you want to study big cats or wolves or dolphins or dinosaurs, learning about their entire life, like what are they related to, where do they evolve, how are they successful in a landscape, is what a biologist does. We study the relationship between a species and its environment. And so that helps us ask questions about conservation. So like I study genetics, some people study diet, some people study fossils. And so being able to have a well-rounded education, like either in biology or environmental education or ecology and evolution, are great ways for you to be able to develop the skill sets that are necessary to be able to ask important questions for science. Alan! That's a great name for a dinosaur.
Did you happen to see the Allosaurus that had a cat in its mouth?
I saw one holding a cat, and surely they were just friends. Just friends. Capybara, which is a really, really cool animal, by the way, but I love, is it Leopards? No, Acacia. I like that you have named your dinosaur capybara.
Look at this.
Imogen, how can people learn more about your work?
Yeah, how do we follow you?
Yeah, so if you can, there's a couple different ways. So I am on Twitter. You can find me. My handle is biologist Imo, because there weren't enough Twitter characters for my full name. I also post a lot about science in general and different wildlife stuff you can find in your backyard on Instagram, and my handle is biologist Imogene. But if you want to learn more specifics about like my research and the things that I'm doing, my website is biologistimogene.com. There's lots of cool photos and stories. There's a blog that I try to keep semi-updated, but I also have a contact form on there that anybody can answer. You can basically just pop in and ask me a question, and I love hearing from students about their interests and like career goals and things that they're trying to do. And if you send me a message, I'll definitely respond.
Awesome sauce. So we have a couple last final orders of business. One, I just want to bring up our friend and all-star Rob. Rob, can you hold up your injury? Hold it up. Apparently Rob had stitches. Oh, that's not.
Oh my gosh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hey, Rob, I want to commiserate. I have broken this thumb twice. I'm right with you. I'm right there with you. I love you guys, today's been great. Imo. I always want to call you Imo because Imo. Should I say Imo or Imo?
Imogene.
Perfect.
Or Imo.
Yo, thank you so much for joining us. You guys definitely follow Imogene on all the platforms. If you want to leave a donation for the work we do here literally every single day, it is Dustin-Growick, Growick, on Venmo. You guys, I'm very excited about tomorrow because we are going to talk about what it's like to take care of and look after hundreds of animals that need your help to survive, including tons of dinosaurs at the world famous San Diego Zoo and Wild Animal Park. That is right. Zookeeper Rick is going to be joining us to talk all about that. I'm incredibly excited. We're probably going to talk about the fossa too, which is an animal we haven't mentioned, which is tied for my favorite with the cheetah, the fossa. Again, thank you, Imogene, so much for joining us and talking all about apex predators. And you guys, I don't care if you're reaching deep down in your pocket to find that chapstick, to take it out and put it next to a pile of snow leopard scat for scale, or simply asking questions about apex predators. Never stop digging. Thanks again to Imogene. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Happy Monday. This has been a phenomenal way to start the week. I'm going to go play with the two apex predators that are currently stalking these environs right now, Maya and Tinley. I'll see everyone tomorrow with Zookeeper Rick. Zoo
Bye, guys.
Animals.
Thanks, Imogene.
Bye, everybody.